the SnowOnly Property Podcast. Brought to you by SnowOnly, the world's largest ski property platform. The only dedicated ski property podcast. Welcome to episode 5 of the SnowOnly Property Podcast. A slightly different angle today. We have with us Alistair Hutson, who is Head of Private Client Partnerships for Smart Currency Exchange. Although not a real estate agent this week, we're going to speak to Alistair about currency exchange and how that can obviously aid your property purchase or sale, I imagine, all around the world. So Alistair, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning to everyone.
Let's start with some very, very simple questions. Let's explain a little bit about your business, and how you can be of service to the real estate industry and obviously around the globe.
Absolutely. So I work for Smart Currency Exchange. We've been in business since 2004. We are a international payment specialist, and we focus on property transactions all across the world. So the transfer of one currency to another, specifically relating to property, as well as some other facets like investments and smaller payments. That's our remit. We've got a big presence across the UK, Spain, Portugal, France, and Cyprus, and we also extend over into areas like Canada, Australia, and Asia as well.
Now, I was a real estate agent in my previous life, and obviously there was such a big point in the transaction where we could have used your services. Obviously, we could have done this earlier. We'll get onto that a little bit later, but let me just kind of rejig the questions a little bit. I think that's probably a good idea. What point of the transaction, from a real estate point of view, do you enter it? Where do you come into play?
It's a really good question. There's no right or wrong answer. However, from our side, the sooner the better. Property transactions, international property transactions, are exposed to a really inherent type of risk, which is all around the exchange rate. You've got an unknown timescale from the point at which an individual looks at acquiring a property, right at that very beginning inquiry stage, all the way through to the moment when funds are due into the notaire's account or the lawyer's account. That could be a month, it could be 6 months, could be 12 months, who knows? Over that period of time, the exchange rates will be moving on a constant basis, which means that one end of your transaction, whether it be in euros, US dollars, is going to be changing, and that's a massive risk to individuals. If you look back at the last 18 or 24 months, there were some huge exchange rate movements during the global pandemic, as much as 14%. And whilst it's unlikely that we see that level of volatility again, it's one element of financial markets and currency that no one can predict and no one can control. So it's really, really important that, just like you might have a mortgage specialist, you may have a financing specialist, that you have someone there in your buying process who is a currency specialist like ourselves, who can sit down and take you through not only the risks you're exposed to, provide you with some guidance and ultimately a solution that you can use to try and reduce that risk where possible.
I'm pretty familiar with this now. So in terms of obviously agreeing a price between the buyer and seller, then you can obviously, if they're doing international payments, you can fix the exchange rate on that particular day. And then so when they go to the sales and purchase agreement at the end or completion, they know exactly how much they're getting for their money. So then they don't lose money, right?
Correct, yeah. So it's called a forward contract. It's a really, really simple tool. So it allows a customer to acquire or purchase a set of currency, for example, 250,000 euros at today's exchange rate, which could be 118, for delivery in September next year. So we will purchase the currency on behalf of the customer. It'll be parked in a bank account, in a client account for them. They would transfer us a small deposit, which is effectively collateral, or sometimes known as margin, to be held against the funds that we've bought. And then come September next year, you would transfer the balance, and you then know that 250,000 euros has a fixed cost of £200,000, for example. So it's a very, very simple way for people in that process to go, this is my budget in sterling, this is how much it's worth in euros, nothing's going to impact that, and I can act with certainty over the buying journey to transfer the funds at the time that's right for me without any hidden increases. And the increase in costs, although on a weekly basis, sterling euro may only average about a move of 1.5%. If you stretch that out over 6 months, it can be as much as 10% in some cases. On larger property values, it becomes quite scary. All of a sudden, between 1 month and the next, you need an extra £75,000 to complete on the purchase,
which inevitably will not complete.
There'll be some panic voices and emails flying around to get a few more days overdue. But for most people, that kind of increase can be the end of that particular journey.
I've experienced it many times. It is inevitably the end of the journey. That's probably a good way to get into it. So obviously, SnowOnly deals with ski property specifically, but you do all real estate transactions, right? So if anyone wants to contact you in regards to, as long as it's international payments, then they can use your services.
Yeah, it's really varied. I think we're quite fortunate that our predominant market is property, and our partner network all across the world has got international clients who are buying or selling property, and they come to us for guidance. But it does cover a huge area of requirements. It could be something like international inheritance. It could be repatriating funds from an investment account. So in America, for example, companies like E-Trade or Fidelity, they're quite popular platforms to hold investments. Getting the money back to the UK, for example, can be quite tricky. So we could be brought in to help facilitate the withdrawal of funds from an investment, things like foreign salaries, all sorts. So anything that involves a currency transaction, there are many ways that you could attempt to move that money around. You could go to the high street bank. You can use one of the many providers that are out there, like Smart, to figure out a better way to transfer it. And that better way can cover so many areas. Obviously, the exchange rate is one really simple way for you to understand how much your transfers cost. But for us, it's all about that service and risk. So we can help those customers understand, okay, I need to transfer X amount of funds over a 6-month period, and I want to reduce the risk as much as possible. And you'll be allocated a dedicated currency trader based in London, who will sit there and work with you through the duration of your account with us to achieve all the things that you want to achieve.
So actually, just on another question then, so predominantly you're contacted by real estate brokers as opposed to, in terms of a property transaction, real estate brokers rather than the buyer and seller or the lawyer, are you?
So my team deals specifically with the partner side, which is the real estate brokers, the mortgage advisors. So we're working with them to help their clients. The trading team is the one that is dealing exclusively with the actual end client, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so we're
kind of part yourself in the middle with the real estate agent.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're one step removed. So anyone that has a client base which could be deemed as international, it's worth having a think about whether or not there's an angle to partner with us, or for at least us to be introduced into that conversation to help those customers.
I guess the easiest question now, while we're on the subject, how would people kind of set up an account? How would this process work? Is it just they give you a call, send an email? Obviously, all this stuff is on SnowOnly. You can kind of check it on there. But if they wanted to do something that wasn't kind of ski specific, how do they get in contact with you?
There's a few different ways to do it. Visiting our website. So if you search on Google Smart Currency Exchange, you'll be able to register as a private client. You can register via the phone, although it's preferred to do it through the website. The journey is really straightforward. So you fill in your application, including your name, your date of birth, where you live, and then you go through a verification process. Smart Currency Exchange are regulated business by the FCA, so we have to follow a very strict procedure of opening client accounts, completing KYC requirements, and then facilitating your transfer. So it's a 3-step process, but most accounts are open within a few hours. So it's really a very straightforward process.
And obviously to book the trade, again, minutes, I would have thought.
Yeah, so it's really easy. To be fair, a lot of our competitors have gone down the route of investing lots of money in apps and really, really fancy platforms. Our remit and what we deem to be our unique offering is the fact that we really encourage customers to book their currency transfers through our trading team. There's no additional cost or any fees associated with that, but we really value the fact that we can speak to our customers on the phone, take them through that journey, and make sure that we answer any potential questions or concerns that haven't been covered off yet, which when you're dealing with personal cash flow via a website or via an app, you can lose that that touch. So for us, it's really about booking trades with our team in London and making sure that it's as smooth as possible.
So, Alistair, I think one of my questions was how much money can you save on a real estate transaction? But I guess we've covered that in a sense in terms of obviously 6 months. So I'll throw a little bit of a curveball at you. So obviously we're talking a little bit about competitors. I guess what makes Smart the best, and why should they come to Smart?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so if anyone listening that's ever moved money before, there's 2 camps you can fall into. So one is going to the bank. The banks have always facilitated international payments. It's a horrible, clunky process to use them. For example, we helped a group of customers last month that were doing an international inheritance transfer. The bank in New Zealand that they were dealing with gave them a 48-hour response time to any inquiry. So not only did they have to wait 2 days to get a response on what the transfer process would look like, they also had to request it at 4 o'clock in the morning because of the time difference. So not customer friendly. In fact, I'd say it's almost anti customer friendly. Very clunky, and also for them, they had absolutely no idea what they were really getting into. Then you transfer into the other camp, which is international payment specialists. Again, if people have used someone like Smart before, there are lots of people out there offering the service we offer. There are really only a small select few of top currency players that are focused on this private client space, and Smart Currency is one of those. And for us, like I said, we don't claim to have the best app or the best online system, but what we really have is a very, very good team of account managers and currency traders in London that will take you through a fairly arduous qualification process for your requirements. They will test your budgets. They'll test your buying process and make sure that at the end of it, you have a solution that will ensure that whatever you're purchasing, and this is for us why property is so important, because that property is such a dream transaction, and to potentially derail it or to potentially lose out on acquiring a property because you've speculated on whether the exchange rates might go in your favor, for us is crazy. And we don't want any of our customers to be in a situation where they can't complete because of something that no one can control. It's a scary concept. And that for us is that's our mission, is to be that trusted voice in international payments.
I think it's a really interesting point, because in terms of real estate, for me, obviously doing international real estate for such a long time, there are so many possibilities of, let's say, the real estate transaction falling over. You're always trying to keep it on the tracks all the way to the end. And, there's emotional things that come along with it. And obviously, setting the currency is such a big thing. Now, I wish I'd probably known this 10 years ago. But it's such a big thing. And I think any real estate agent that's listening and you don't do this, I'd speak to Alistair, because it's such an important part of the process and probably can save a lot of deals at the end of it. The question I had for you is, how much currency risk exists in an international property purchase?
So it's a really good question. And the answer is an unknown. There's so many factors. And like you just said, during that property transaction, there are many different things that could come in to try and derail it. Currency is certainly one of them. I think for us, what's really fascinating is when we speak to customers right at the beginning of their buying journey, they are right at the very start of what's going to be potentially 3 to 6 to 12 month process. They have a very, very good idea of what is affordable at this point in time. Depending on what happens in the currency markets over that period of time, that affordability will move significantly in some cases. So everyone, regardless of whether you are a first-time inquiry or if you're someone that's acquiring a second or third property, until you physically have the currency you need to purchase that property in a bank account in the local country, you are exposed to currency. It's as simple as that. And I think using sterling euro for obviously people in the UK who are looking at properties in France, March, April last year, when the pandemic sort of really took off, sterling euro dropped to about 104, which for all intents and purposes, if you add in a bank margin for an exchange rate, is parity, 1-for-1. And if you rewind the clocks 3 to 4 years ago when we were at 140, yeah, it's a monstrous difference in affordability and how far your budgets can stretch. There were even talks when we were at 104 that sterling euro was going to go below 1, which was again a terrifying concept that we find ourselves in. Those movements, those reactions by the markets, they can't be controlled by anyone. No one can tell you whether it's going to go higher, lower tomorrow or next year. But what we do have is those tools to be able to say to you, right, you've made a commitment to buy a property in France. It may be this one you're looking at now. It may be one slightly further down the road. But you need to know that your budget of €500,000 is only going to cost you X amount of sterling. And the only way you can do that is either transfer the full amount of sterling into euros and park them in on one of our segregated client accounts until you've opened a French bank. Or if you don't have the cash flow available and you want to keep some sterling available, then you can take out the forward contract, which we mentioned earlier. So let us buy the €500,000 for you. You transfer us a deposit. We park the funds in our ring fence client account. You contact us in 6 months' time when the funds need to be transferred, and we'll receive the balance off you and make the appropriate transfer.
Yeah, to be fair, as I said before, I think for anyone that's listening, especially from a real estate point of view, I know that people are a little bit skeptical about these things sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, it's a lot of hassle, kind of opening up an account." 100% do it, or at least speak to Alistair, because I know from experience what a difference this makes. My last question for you, Alistair, is what advice would you give to someone looking to use your services? Obviously, nothing that you told us before, but is there any kind of things that maybe the listeners that you can give them a little bit of advice to kind of help them with the real estate action process?
I think there's a couple of things. The first one is really interesting. I think it's a human behavior, but I would really try and avoid, once you've set your budgets, avoid looking at the exchange rates too often. It can become a bit of a curse. We speak to loads of clients that are in their buying journey, and they say to us, I wake up in the morning, I check the exchange rates, I go to bed, I check the exchange rates. The only reason that affects them is because they haven't, or they are in a position where they can't actually take out a forward contract, or they're not quite at that stage where they're ready, and therefore their entire buying process is hinged on whether the exchange rates are going to go in their favor or out of their favor, which they can't control, and neither can we, which creates a really horrible situation for them because they are literally checking it on a daily basis, sometimes hourly basis. Last week we had the Bank of England interest rate announcement. That had an impact on the markets. That obviously affects people's affordability. So people are sat there waiting for economic news that might edge them closer towards their goal. And then we move into that really dangerous space of speculation, whereby your purchase or your property sale is hinged around the currency markets. So I think once you understand currency, and again, we don't expect everyone to be experts. We've got clients of ours that have worked in trading floors at banks, and they will come to us and say, my remit is X, Y, Z. I'm relatively unaware of how your business and how the FX market works. I'd like you to take me through that journey. So it doesn't matter where you are in that education piece. The best thing you can do is speak to our team in London. They're really, really well versed in every type of transaction you can imagine. We've got loads of products and services that you can use to build into your buying journey, and ultimately we're there to work for the client and to make sure that those ambitions, those dreams, whatever they might be, that we make sure that we facilitate them and that we do it in the best in the best way possible.
But for all these real estate transactions, obviously you're trying to get a balance between the buyer and seller anyway, right? So if you're just basically giving it in the outset transparency to what people are paying in a real estate transaction, because if it fluctuates anyway and someone feels like they're winning, someone then has to lose, right? So it always has to be a level playing field. So it's better to write it on paper so to know exactly how much people get. So when the real estate sales and purchase agreement finishes at the end, then everyone knows exactly the payment, and that's essentially it, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think to give everyone a bit of background, the forward contract, you won't get that from a high street bank. If you went to Nationwide or Lloyds or HSBC and said, I want to take out a forward contract to give me certainty, they don't offer that product. A lot of the kind of neo bank and financial, I guess, fintech startups, they don't offer that facility. For them, it's all about churning people through an app and a platform, high volume transactions, whereas the forward contract piece is so simple. And to give everyone an example, it was originally designed to help businesses. So if you imagine you're a CFO or a financial director, the beginning of each financial year, if you're importing or exporting or whatever you're purchasing, you need to have a rough idea of how much is it going to cost our business each year to buy €1 million worth of product from Italy. Now, if you buy those euros all throughout the year at different times, you have absolutely no idea what those costs will be, because it depends entirely on the exchange rate. So the forward contract was designed for financial teams to go, right, we will purchase €1 million for you at today's exchange rate. That €1 million can be utilized all across the financial year as and when you need to draw down from it. So the FD can sit there and go, right, we've booked €1 million at 118. I know now that my costs for the business are 800k. Doesn't matter where the exchange rates go. If they move to parity, if they go to 140, it's irrelevant. It doesn't impact us because our exposure is €1 million and they've been bought. And that whole product offering is now available to the retail market as well for things like property. And it works really, really well. I think for a lot of people, it might take them a couple of times to, I guess, get their head around the mechanics of it. That's exactly why we're here, to take you through that journey, explain to you all the different tools that are available, let you make the best decision that's right for you. And that decision will be based on risk appetite. It will be based on your timings and where you are in that journey. And our team in London will support you on that, whether it's one or two phone calls. In some cases, we have customers that are with us for 6 or 7 months, and they might not book their transfer until the latter part of that journey, when they're in the right position financially and in that buying journey.
Alistair, thank you so much for your time. I think that's plenty of food for thought for people. You can contact Alistair. I'll put all his details below on the links. But honestly, if you are considering as a real estate agent of doing a transaction, then please get in touch with Smart Currency Exchange. It's a brilliant service. Alistair, thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure we will get loads of people coming your way to book their forward contracts.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Right, take care.
The SnowOnly Property Podcast, brought to you by SnowOnly, the world's largest ski property platform. Mountains of property at snowonly.com. The SnowOnly Property Podcast is produced by Shark 13 Productions.